Welcome to the Bob Priest Show of Life podcast. I'm your host, Bob Priest. Thanks for tuning in today's show. This podcast is dedicated to individuals and professionals who desire to learn more about the subject of health and wellness, as well as alternative technologies to better health and vitality. Let's get started. Welcome to today's show. I'm Bob Priest, your host. Today, my guest is Mark Fox. Welcome, Mark.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let me tell you a little bit more about Mark. He's an entrepreneur, scientist, engineer, author, creative thinking consultant, crop formation researcher, and a former space shuttle chief engineer. He also enjoys hot air ballooning for about 35 years and has built his own airplane. Wow, Mark, that sounds like a few things you've done in your life.
And still trying to come up with new stuff too.
You obviously like to stay busy and you look for new and exciting opportunities in your world. Mark is also the founder of Rosana Health, and we'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. But Mark, tell us about your story. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got involved in all these different areas of life. And I'm anxious to hear about this.
So my dad worked on rockets, the Air Force rockets and stuff. So I'm actually in the house that I grew up in. I ended up moving back here, which I never thought would happen. But it's I grew up around rockets. I live in Cocoa Beach, Florida. My dad worked on rockets. My undergraduate was chemical engineering, and I never wanted to get into rockets because they're around. I was with them my whole life. But me and my best friend, he was graduated as a nuclear physicist, and I was a chemical engineer. And in 1983, nobody was hiring any engineers anywhere. So him and I were hanging drywall for $3.50 an hour. So it's like, all right, well, this isn't working. And finally somebody goes, hey, have you ever put your resume in out the Cape for this new company, Morton Thiokol? I'm like, no, never heard of them. So I did. And it was one of those funny things, of the most severe case of malicious compliance I've ever seen. It's like, come in for an interview. The guy hands me a brochure and he goes, I was waiting for a bunch of interview questions. He hands me a brochure and goes, we're Morton Thiokol. We make solid rocket motors, specialty chemicals, and salt. Pays $12.14 an hour. You want the job? I'm like, what am I going to be doing? He goes, you're an engineer, aren't you? And he opens a manila envelope and runs his finger down and sees my resume. And I go, yeah, I'm a chemical engineer. He goes, how do I know engineering stuff? Right? And well, when do I start? He goes, now. I go, now? Yes, now. So I learned out that after that, it was a cost plus contract, right? So they had a slot for 80 engineers that they just got. And so they were losing money every day. They didn't have an engineer. So it was like, the rule was just go hire anyone with a degree. And if they're idiots, we'll get rid of them later. So I figured I'd be there about 6 months. I was there like 17 years. So that's how I got into rockets. I wasn't expecting to stay there a long time. But that's
right place, right time, huh?
Yep. Yes.
That is so cool. What are some other things that you've been doing? I see you're an entrepreneur, so you've dabbled in a lot of different places. What else? What are some other things that you do?
My wife asked me last year, she goes, how many companies have you started in the last 10 years? I'm like, I don't know. She goes, well, go count them. Well, it's like 12. So I created how to generate art from DNA. So you take a mouse swab and look at the DNA sequence, art and music. I made something I thought was a really cool idea. It was kind of a right tech, not high tech, but right tech for losing your credit cards or your phone or keys by putting a little sticker on them. So somebody found it, you just scanned it. Somebody would see it with their phone, they'd scan it, and it would send a text to you with a GPS location that showed where your stuff was at. So I thought that was really ingenious. Nobody cared. A lot of other things with DNA and some other things. I know enough about DNA to be dangerous. So just different stuff like that I've done. To the extreme, theoretically still own part of a woman's clothing company. So I've been selling women's clothing at a lot of the businesses and stuff that you go into. It's the fundamentals are the same, right? You walk in and go, it's women's clothing, but this is what's broken here, here, and here. It has nothing to do with the actual product. It's just the systems and stuff. So I did a lot of that. If you're old enough to remember a zip drive, the old, right, from iOmega. So I was in charge of their internet and their customer service, which was when the internet was just starting. So this was 1996 to 98 timeframe. And I learned one thing at iOmega is if you have a product that everyone in the world needs and wants, and you're the only one that makes it, you can have idiots running the place and they'll still make money, right? Because it's so they were a company that just exploded overnight as far as demand. And, I think they built something like 100,000 zip drives without a drawing just from the garage, right? So, the first day they put me in charge of the call center, and I'm like, what's a call center? I didn't even know what that concept was, right? And it's like, okay, when people have broken whatever, they call you. I'm like, okay. So Bob, when I got there, the phone bill was $33 million a year.
My goodness.
$3 million a year. And I go, so what are people calling for? And they're like, you get all these opinions, right? And I go, well, where's the Pareto charts, right? Where's the data? What's the percent? Nobody had heard of what a Pareto chart was. And it's like, okay. So you find out the number one reason people were calling was it wasn't plugged in. Okay. So back then there was two cords. There's a power cord, and was called a parallel printer cord. It had to go to the printer for the thing to work. Well, the second cord was in a cardboard separator in the bottom of the box. So people would plug it in, they go, mine doesn't work. Well, is a green light on? I don't have a green light. Okay, well, so you do some simple stuff like put a red hand in the box, says stop. This thing has two cords, plug them both in. I think that probably saved $5 million in phone calls, right? So just some real simple blocking and tackling. And I got to learn a lot about the internet because I ran it for those guys for 6 years. And that has dovetailed into a lot of the businesses that I've started. They're all internet based somehow, some way, on the front end at least. And so done a lot of different things. Like you said earlier, I love learning new stuff. It's part of my Alzheimer's prevention program. I'm constantly trying to learn new things, and it's exciting. So
that is so neat, Mark. It's it's really cool to meet people that just think out of the box all the time. And sounds like that's what you've done and continue to do. What really caught my attention with your bio when I was reading this is that you've invented something. And but before we get into that, prior to this invention that we're going to talk about, what do you consider to be some of your some of your biggest accomplishments to date?
I mean, personally, probably building my own airplane, and as of today, hasn't killed me yet. I flew it yesterday, and I've had it for years, and it's still a challenge. You never stop building it, and it's a home build. But that's a big deal. Obviously, being lucky enough to marry the person I did has been awesome. What else? I built my own. Not my own, but as a company, I took on the rocket motor tests back when I used to work there were like, $40 million a test, which is super, super expensive to test any new material. So I proposed a rocket motor that was much, much smaller, but it scaled correctly on the inside of it. So for $10,000 a test instead of 40 million, we could test all new materials and stuff. So that was one of my rocket accomplishments, I guess. So that and I don't know, there's a couple of examples there.
Sounds like you're a problem solver.
Yeah, and you said think outside the box, and it's a little, that's a phrase obviously it's used a lot, but sometimes it's thinking inside the box differently. And I'll explain what I mean there. There's a thing called TRIZ, T-R-I-Z. It's a Russian acronym that roughly translates to the theory of inventive problem solving. So this Russian scientist in the 1950s, Henrik Altschuler was his name. He went to the library to look for procedures and books on creativity, and there weren't any. So he's like, okay, there's no process for this. He actually went to the Russian Navy, got a grant to go study it. And what they found out, they looked at 300,000 patents, technical patents, and found out they only fall within 40 categories, which is real. That's not outside the box, that's inside the box. And so, and since then, the community has looked at, the TRIZ community has looked at like 3 million patents. There's still just 40 answers. So it's what's called the 40 lenses of TRIZ. And so if you're looking at a problem, you said problem solver, or coming up with a new creative idea, you look at it through those lenses and you just pick one lens at a time. For example, number one is segmentation. How do you break something up into smaller pieces to make it better? And when we were talking earlier, you even mentioned that using snippets and stuff like in a podcast, or taking a video, 1 hour video. I did that long before video was easy in my creative thinking. I'd have these 1 hour training classes, nobody would watch them. And when I broke them into 3 and 5 minute classes, they were consumable and they started to work. So segmentation, there's tons and tons of examples. Another lens is called taking out. So how do you take something out of it to make it better, more creative, more interesting, a better solution? Examples, everyone, all your listeners are photographers. Everyone in the world's a photographer today because you have a camera, right?
Correct.
You have a phone with a camera in it. So next time you take a picture, when you take that picture, go ahead and take it like you normally would, but then walk twice as close to the subject if you can. Not the Grand Canyon, don't step off the cliff, but walk twice as close to the subject as your first picture. Take a second picture, and almost always the second picture will be more interesting because it's taking information out of the image. And in photography, it's called frame line magnetism. Frame line magnetism, you take stuff out of the frame, like my hand's out of the frame right now, so you can't tell what's in it, to make it more interesting. So there's 40 different lenses like that. So you that's it. One other one real quick is lens 13 is do it the other way around, do it opposite. And this class that I was just talking about, Kerry Mullis, who won the Nobel Prize for PCR, polarized chain reaction, he had never heard of TRIZ before, but when I explained it to him, he's like, yeah, that's exactly what I did, the other way around on everything. So with PCR, I'm going to butcher this, but what you're trying to do is if you're trying to study gene DHL 133, you're trying to find this little snippet, a little piece of DNA. So DNA is a very tough molecule. You have to beat the crap out of it to get it to come apart. And when it comes apart in a million pieces, you got to find that piece that you want, which is really hard. So what he decided to do, instead of looking for the needle in the haystack, why don't we make that little needle that I'm looking for reproduce itself? So there's just as many needles as there is hay. That's the exact analogy he described of how he got a Nobel Prize, right? He just did it the opposite of what everyone else was doing. And he's not a biologist, he was a chemist.
That's amazing. So with this thought in mind, let's talk about your new invention. It's called you're the inventor of Vibe. Let's talk about Vibe and tell us what it is, what it does, and how you use this.
So it's a PEMF, so pulse electromagnetic field. So it's putting out a pulse electromagnetic field. And for people that think, well, that sounds like voodoo already, think about it for a second. Is the Earth is constantly putting out a PEMF. So the Earth has 7.83, 20.1, and 14.3 hertz, 3 different bands. So you're engulfed in it. The whole world's engulfed in it. It's at about a half a Gauss, 0.4 Gauss is a strength level. So it's not something new and magical, but the protocols, the device has 55 different protocols, and it's using mixed frequency pairs. And the way to think about it is frequency A is what's wrong, B is where is it. So it might be inflammation in the elbow. Now, something like PTSD, which is one of the main things I've done most of my clinical trials on, is PTSD is a full body ailment. It's in every part of the brain, it's in every organ, it's in all your skin. So that is a pretty complex protocol. It goes through about 76 different frequency pairs in about 2 hours and 15 minutes. So what it does And the doctors were always asked, scientists and stuff, is what's the mechanism of action? Tell me exactly how it works. Well, okay, you don't know how aspirin works either. You have a theory, but you don't have a proof, okay?
Right.
The theory is, and we talked about this earlier, is the cells in your body all have an electrical charge. When that charge gets low, you get sick, and it gets low with age. So what it does, number one, is it recharges the cell's batteries, just like recharging a car, okay? So it recharges cells' batteries, number one. Number two, something called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is the number one fuel that your cells love to eat to be healthy, and it increases ATP up to 500%. That's been demonstrated. So those two things, ATP and recharging your cells' batteries, just like in this context, just like any drug doesn't cure anything, it just allows your body to fix itself and relieve symptoms while it does it. That's what I believe happens here, is it's charging your cells' batteries to allow your body to fix itself as best it can.
Well, another way I think you could look at this too, maybe to make it for the common person, is when you have a cell phone, it has bars on it that says you've got 5 bars, so you've got a lot of cell signal. And let's say we're having a fire at our house and I need to call the fire department. If that cell signal is down to 1 bar, I may not get through to the fire department. And so the consequence may be my house burns down. So it's important that we have the cell signal at its optimal level, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And because you brought that up, I want to make one point, because this is a very big misunderstanding in this PEMF field. Because cell phones, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all the bad EMF that's out there that causes cancer, theoretically does all these bad things. Your phone's at 1,000,000 hertz, right? It's super high frequency. The PEMFs that I use are 1,000 hertz or less, or 1,000,000 times less, and frequency level. So there's a big difference between EMFs. EMFs are designed to transfer from one point to another, like your cell phone to a tower.
Mm-hmm.
It goes long distances. PEMF collapses back on itself. So think of it, a magnetic loop that you remember in school, the little magnets going around a bar.
Right.
So it's pulsing and it's collapsing back on itself. It's not emitting and going. And what we have found, the industry has found with PEMF, is if your body doesn't need it, it just doesn't use it, right? It just passes through the body and nothing happens. So there's really no side effects to it. The only side effects, if you call them that, is if it makes you feel sick, which is very rare, but if it does, it's a 95% probability you have an infection. You either have an impacted tooth or an infected toe or something, and you just don't know. So go get a blood test if that happens. Do not, the first time you use it, do not be driving or operating a catapult, because if you are in severe pain, the speed at which it gets rid of it it releases a ton of, your body releases a ton of endorphins. So you feel drunk or stoned. I had a woman over here that had a car wreck. She ran it, put it on her back, and she started backpedaling and sat down in that chair over there because it released that many endorphins, and that's been measured in the blood, that the endorphin release and stuff. So I use this analogy that this is where I always lose the doctors. I mentioned nobody knows how aspirin works, right?
Right.
They don't. It's been around for 3,000 years. But so everyone on this call has heated a slice of pizza in a microwave oven, right?
Correct.
So how does it heat the pizza? And then when I ask people that, they go, "Oh, it's a trick question, I guess, because he asked me." And they'll come up with something to the effect of, the microwaves are bouncing around, they're causing vibration, or they're doing something to, right? So the theory is you hit it with a certain frequency, microwave energy, and it makes a water molecule, it's rotational vibration is what it's called. It makes the water molecule spin on its own axis, which causes friction. Bob, nobody in the world has ever photographed or videoed a spinning water molecule, ever, right? But we all heat pizza in a microwave oven. So it's like, all right, it's the theory on how it works. So my logic in all of this is, number one, make sure I don't hurt anybody. And I've spent a ton of time on that and I don't want to sell voodoo, right? I'm trying to do clinical trials and prove the stuff works. In addition to all that, the main thing is relief before reason. And I'll tell you what, most people that buy these devices or get into this technology is they've already had 3 surgeries. They're on 5 different medications. They haven't found the relief they want. So they're pretty open to, let me try something else. So it's only the doctors that beat me up about mechanism of action. The rest of people is, give me one, let me try it. Doesn't work, I'll send it back. Great. As long as it doesn't hurt anyone, and it hasn't. I mean, so that's, again, those are only side effects, really. The other one is, if you really need help, it will make you tired, right? So I have problems where I tell my customers, use it 3 to 4 times a week. I have people that get addicted to it. So Bob, I had a friend of mine, ex-race car driver. Listen to these stats. He has 4 concussions and he's been on fire twice. He takes 8 to 10 Ambien a night to sleep for the last 15 years. He's now on 0 Ambien and he sleeps great by using this device, right? So I got people like him who are addicted that'll run it 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day. So at least I have data now that says it's not hurting anybody, but I don't recommend doing it that much because your body's telling you, if it's tired, I need time to take the energy you gave me and use it, right? To make my body better. Just like if you have a big meal, all your energy is going to your stomach, right? To digest the food. That's why you feel tired. So I always tell people, just run it 3 to 4 times a week, once a day, maybe. Don't go crazy with it. So,
well, Mark, this is fascinating for me because I had a stroke 7 years ago. And of course, after having the stroke, the first thing the doctors did was throw me on all these different medications. One was for helping with the nerve damage that had happened from the stroke, so I could sleep at night. Another one was for this, another for that, but it ended up being several. And I started going on a big search for natural, holistic types of ways to take care of those issues. But along the way, my biggest thing that I learned was that our body heals itself if you give it the right information.
right.
Cells are damaged through life as we age, the types of things we do to ourselves, whether it's sun damage or just eating wrong things, whatever. And so I learned that the cells die, but they can be regenerated. And from the standpoint of what you just said about the ATP and how it affects the mitochondria, the energy sources and all that. So I started learning, and I don't have a health background whatsoever, but it started making common sense to me. And this device that you just explained to me sounds like this takes what your body would normally be doing, a healthy body, but this is taking and talking to your cells and helping those cells to start communicating again to other cells, like cells, so that the energy level now is doing its job. Is that kind of a simplistic way of saying this?
No, that's exactly right. It's giving energy to the cells so the cells can do their job, because that's been shown that when the voltage, the potential, it's actually between the cell membrane inside and outside. When that voltage drops, there's a whole lot of correlation that shows sickness and that type of thing. And you said communication. So when the charge drops, cells got to communicate with the cells around them. And when it's almost like your telephone analogy is, they don't have a strong enough signal to talk to the ones next to them. It's interesting you said stroke, because this is, what's happening, to clarify, I'm a ex-rocket scientist, woman's clothing. So I'm not a doctor, right? But I get an email every day now that says, hey, will this help with AMTRSP? And I'm like, huh. So I've learned, so I have to go Google it because I don't know what it is. So I've learned to be careful. I got to have a cold drink when I go do it because it's going to scare me, whatever I read. But then I have to look for the core problem and go, okay. And actually I've had 3 people for stroke call me, and I look at it and I go, okay, run the brain balancing protocol, see if it helps. It's helped all of them. Didn't know if it would or not. But a lot of times I'll look and I go, is it nerves? Is it, and most of the time it's inflammation of something, right? I got this in my throat. This guy, I have a guy right now, just before this call, that he's having a little trouble learning how to use the device, which he's making it too hard, and it shouldn't be, because you just pick the protocol you want, hit play. But he has serious prostate problems, and I'm like, I don't have a prostate protocol, but try general inflammation and put it in your pocket. And he goes, this is unbelievable. He doesn't want to I said, send the device back and let me check, make sure it's working like it should. And he won't give it back to me because he's going on vacation in 2 weeks. He's like, I can't live without this. His quote yesterday was, it's my lifeline now for this prostate thing. I'm not giving it back. I'm like, okay, take it on vacation. But I've learned that from a general sense is like, what's the underlying thing they're telling me? A lady called me, said, hey, my arms every other week will just suddenly itch so bad that I have to do everything to not bleed to death. You got something for that? And I'm like, it sounds like allergy or general inflammation. Run them both. And she did. I've had 3 doctors contact me that said, this thing is awesome for MS, muscular sclerosis. I'm like, I don't have a protocol for that. So I asked them, I go, you running fibromyalgia? And they all 3 went, yep. So, okay. Now, my favorite story of that is the most magical one. It's probably why I'm still doing this, Bob. I had a 17-year-old girl tell me, Mark, I have Tourette's. Bad. She goes, I've never had a date in my life because no boy's going to ask me out. I'm a freak. She goes, but I ran brain balancing. The Tourette's went away and I have a date on Saturday night. I'm like, oh, I mean, it made me cry the first time she told me that. And I'm like, I might cry right now thinking about it, but it's like, I didn't know it could do anything like that. It's like, and I don't know the mechanism of action of how that possibly got rid of Tourette's, but she hasn't had an episode since then. That was a year ago.
Man, those are powerful testimonies, Mark. I hope you're recording those and getting those for people to be able to watch and see. That is awesome. There's some great life experiences that you've had, but it seems to me you've landed on one that isn't so much geared towards the things you did. It's geared now towards helping people. And I like that about this product because people are searching for things that they need help with, like you just mentioned, finding an alternative to the way Western medicine's always been done. Not that that's bad, don't get me wrong. I think when you need a certain pill because of certain thing going on, that may be what needs to happen immediately, but you don't want to see that being the rest of your life. You want to see something that helps more naturally. And that's what I'm all about in my podcast, is just finding those types of things that could possibly help people through health challenges in a more natural, holistic way. And I think you found that. I think this is one of those aha moments in the world of health, and people need to hear this podcast. And I'm looking forward to sharing this with my audience this coming week. Tell us how they could reach you, Mark, and get more information. And I know you have a website, so tell us about that.
So it's Resona, RESONA. It's short for resonance. Resona.health. There's no .com in there, so it's just Resona.health is the website. And for your listeners, just / Bob Priest, your name, and it's a unique landing page. They can go there. I have tons and tons of information. It can start at the highest level of just a little brochure. Then you can go more and more rabbit hole as you want to. There's videos that explain stuff. There's like 30,000 published papers on this technology. So
wow.
It doesn't really exist, not new. It's been around since Tesla's time for hundreds of years. So yeah, that's the website. One last real quick story, because it made me think of that, is it wasn't an aha moment. It's been a 20-year venture. This is how it started. For people that can't see it, I'm holding a picture of my dog from 20 years ago. She couldn't come up the stairs one morning and started crying, which she'd never done. So my wife and I go, I guess we're flipping a coin to see who's not going to work, right? So we took her to the vet, and she had severe arthritis in her spine. And a friend of mine was a very good, real forward-thinking veterinarian. He goes, hey, there's this lady that has this magical machine that can reverse arthritis. I'm like, really? So I set up an appointment to take her up there, and she got so sick so fast that we didn't get a chance to do it. We had to put her down. But for 20 years, I've had that in the back of my head. So I've been researching it that long. I'm a rocket scientist. I didn't believe any of it. I still don't believe a lot of it, right? And so I keep researching it and testing it. It's like, can this be real? But I've seen enough evidence that it is. The problem is, it's being held hostage in clinical environments with expensive machines. And if anyone's heard of PEMF, most of the time they've heard of a mat. And the mats are $5,000, right? So my goal was to make a device that was consumer friendly and affordable. I started off super naively, and what it really is, Bob, tell everybody, it's a Bluetooth speaker, or it's an MP3 player. Okay, started off with Bluetooth speaker, but I found out too many people can't do a Bluetooth connection. But it's basically, it's a MP4 player, because the protocols are actually in MP3 format. That's the one thing I think that's novel I came up with, was use a music synthesizer, and I don't play any music, but I use a synthesizer to make MP3. So it's playing a song, a protocol, but there's no speaker in it. So it's playing it through a coil, which makes a magnetic field. But so anyway, what an aha moment. It's been a 20-year journey. This device itself has been 3 years in development. So
hold that up. We're doing video on here, even though my audience just listen. But I'm looking at this device. It's about the size of what he said. Looks like it's very conveniently.
So this is the smallest iPhone made, right? Everyone,
right.
Because I have a little one.
It's smaller than the iPhone.
Smaller than the iPhone. It weighs 2.4 ounces. You alphabetically pick one of the 55 protocols you want. You hit play, and you put it in your pocket.
Yeah, this is real simple.
I tried to make it so simple, it's ridiculous.
you hit a hot button with me, Mark. I'm a music educator by trade.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I have a master's in music, and I had a student in one of my classes that wrote an entire symphony via computer programming. And so I understand the world of electronics and music from that standpoint. I also know that in my 30 plus years in music education, that the frequencies in a musical ensemble in tune has an effect on the human body. I've seen it happen time and time again. I've been able to move audiences with music. I've been able to move audiences to tears, to laugh, whatever. So when you start talking about energy and movement of the physics of the world, you're right on target with what you're doing. So I think our audience needs to do more research and find out how this works, but they also need to also think about, this isn't voodoo. This is just something that we didn't have 20 years ago. We didn't know. Doctors didn't know. There's all kinds of new things today that are having positive effects on our bodies that don't have to be a pill that you put in your body.
One comment to that about the 20 years, because the reality is magnetic therapy has been around since 3000 BC, right? Monks have been humming for millennia for a reason, right? There's all those things. So Nikolai Tesla and those guys in turn of the century were doing a ton of research on this, and a lot of doctors and universities were too. Real quick, what happened in 1934 was a thing called Flexner Report came out, and it made it illegal to do anything but drugs and surgery, or you lost your license. And the Carnegie and those guys all pulled funding from all the universities. So all of that research, majority of it got scrapped, thrown away, which is sad, because your body it's chemical, it's electrical, it's mechanical, right? And only in the Western world do we, forget about the electrical part. It's insane, because your whole body is an electrical thing, right? You're firing neurons all the time. Your body, you couldn't move or do anything if there wasn't an energy exchange with electricity.
I agree with you. I mean, that is so, we know that. We feel that energy in our body day to day, if you really pay attention to your body. Wow, this really has been exciting. Mark, from your life experiences, what are a few points you could leave our listeners that just would be something positive for them to think about or chew on after they listen to this podcast?
If you're old enough to know a comedian in the 80s, his name was Rich Hall. He had a thing called sniglets. And sniglets were words that don't exist in the dictionary but should, right? So there's a whole comedy routine that he went around that, and one of them was called boson. It's a combination of bozo and ozone. So boson is that invisible gas that surrounds people, that stops new, fresh ideas from getting in. So one of my messages would be, get rid of your boson, okay? Go try it. I used to teach creative thinking at Los Alamos National Labs, right? Smartest nuclear physicists in the world. I'm just a stupid chemical engineer, right? So I already know when I walk in, I'm going to get abused. So here's what I do. I don't introduce myself, Bob. I walk in, I don't even make eye contact with them. I walk in, I go to my first slide, shows the history of physics and how every 12 years, they're completely wrong. Not even close, like an order of magnitude off, right? So I look at them, I go, whatever you guys worked on for your PhD thesis, there's a 50-50 chance it's completely wrong in 10 years, right? So I'm trying to humble these people as I keep it. It's called tenderizing your brain. So you're not always right. Physics has probably never changed. Our interpretation of it has, right? And so just keep an open mind. Don't get surrounded by boson and try new things. When I teach creative thinking, I tell people, how can you fail in 2 weeks? Because you'll come up, here's how, the reason most ideas don't succeed is they never get started. You come up with a reason to kill it before you ever try it. So go with the attitude of, how can I fail in 2 weeks? I know I'm going to fail. I'm planning on failing, but I might learn something in that 2 weeks. And then nobody can say you can't come up with a 2-week experiment. I did this one time to the CEO real quick. I was trying forever to get this project approved. He goes, no, the whole board's going no. I'm actually standing in a urinal, right? Both peeing. And I said, why can't I just run a damn experiment? And he goes, well, I don't care if you do an experiment. And I just left it at that. So it was 6 years later, somebody goes, hey, that project, and reviewing projects, that's not on the list of stuff here. And I go, right, it's not approved. It's an experiment. Well, how long? You can't just do an experiment. Like, how long has that been going on? Like 6.5 years. Why are you still doing it? Because it made like $30 million. You want me to quit? Right? So it's just like, no, all of life's an experiment. The space shuttle was a 30-year experiment. So go out there, test things. Don't think you know everything. That's kind of my life lesson, is how to fail fast. Test uncomfortably early and just get out there, and it's not going to matter in 100 years. See what you can learn quickly.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Well, Mark, is there anything else you'd like to leave with us before we say goodbye to you today?
No, just a device. I get in, with the negative Facebook haters and stuff. Just like, you know what? Try it for 30 days. I'll give you your money back if it doesn't work. I don't want a single device to be out there anywhere that somebody paid for and it didn't help them. That doesn't do me any good to have all that negativity. So yeah, just try the thing. Have an open mind. I've had some unbelievably skeptical people go, I tried it, and they do it as a challenge, right? It's just so they can slap me in the face and say, see, it didn't work. And most of the time it does. So by the way, PTSD, we have a 93% success rate with it.
Wow, that's huge. Where do you get that kind of success on anything in life?
Right, exactly.
Well, Mark, this has been a joy to meet you and to hear about not only your life, but this invention that you've been working on for many years that you have out there. And folks, I would encourage you to go to his website, look at this, use my name, like he said, and that way he'll know that I reached you and it'll go to him. Thank you so much for being on the Bob Priest Show of Life today. If you would like to reach out to me and learn any more about what I do and who I promote and advocate for, it's go to bobpriest.life. That's BOBPRIEST.LIFE. Guys, have a great day, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Thanks.
Hey everyone, thanks again for checking into today's episode. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, Apple, leave me a 5-star rating if you so choose, and if you enjoyed the show. I'm so grateful that you're spending some time with us and listening to our podcast. If you need to get in touch with me to learn more about my passion to inform and educate about alternative methods and modalities of healing, you can go to www.bobpriest.life. That's BOBPRIEST.life. While there, check out a blog or two and listen to other podcast sessions that I've had in the past. Guys, have a great day, and thank you so much for joining in.